Ladies and gentlemen, the Resident Evil 4 remake is here. Well, technically it's not here yet since its official release date is 24 March 2023, but a couple weeks ago we got an official trailer and an extended gameplay so spine-tingling it brought back some of my retro survivor horror PTSD, and I love it. Looking to continue their incredible winning streak of stellar RE remakes, Capcom seems to have thrown everything but the kitchen sink to make this one Shinji Mikami masterpiece even better. The game looks stunning. The graphics, the characters, the combat, everything looks new and improved. But with all we've seen and heard so far, the real question is what changes or improvements are we expecting to see when the game finally releases come 2023? So if you're a gamer, a Resident Evil fan, or just a sick, twisted survival horror game enthusiast, then you're in for a treat. Today, we look at Resident Evil 4 Remake, 5 changes we expect to see. Number 1, tone. Alright, just like part 2 and 3 remakes before it, the Resident Evil 4 Remake will have a massive shift in tone to make today's era of gaming. That means no Ashley prancing around in a miniskirt, no Ada breaking through windows in some nightgown, and no Leon spouting cringy one-liners. The reason for these changes is not far-fetched. The original Resident Evil 4 was released at a much different time from today. Though at its core, a horror game, Resident Evil 4 still retains some campy, almost childish dialogue as well as bombastic, Michael Bay-inspired action sequences and tedious levels which were the standard at the time but would certainly feel very much out of place today, especially in line with the darker, grittier precedent set by Resident Evil 7 and 8. In the OG Resident Evil 4, Leon was a ganado-kicking, zombie surplexing, one-liner quipping lord of badassery, akin to more of a superhero or Dante from Devil May Cry than a secret agent working for the government. This is not to mention the cutscenes where he flirts with Hunnigan. Even though the whole world knows Leon only has eyes for one lady, and that's Claire Redfield. I'm just kidding, it's Ada. But from the trailers, we can already see that Leon and the Indeed characters around him have a more grounded and realistic look, much like they did in the Resident Evil 2 remake. In the same vein, Ashley's character will certainly be fleshed out a lot more now. In the original game, Ashley's role was simply to be eye candy and a damsel in distress. But with the shift in the tone, it is expected that she would be a bit more formidable and less of a pain in the butt. Some peculiar fans will certainly kick dust over the inability to look up her skirt and lack a sexy Ada, just like they did over Jill's tube top and miniskirt change. My opinion, ultimately these changes were expected and are well-welcomed updates. Alright, now about graphics and visual changes. Just like its predecessors, Resident Evil 4 Remake has improved. Photorealistic graphics that towers head and shoulders above the original. While the visuals of the original were certainly revolutionary for its time, and Capcom did the best it could with the hardware available, it looks like child's play compared to what we've seen so far of the remake. The woods are dark and haunting, like something straight out of a Blair Witch Project. The creepy cabins feel cluttered and lived in, just like what we saw in Resident Evil Village. The lighting is also much darker and unsettling, but the best part about all these upgrades is that the world still feels eerily familiar. Many of the characters and locations still retain their signature look, despite some far-reaching adjustments. It's something that's really tricky to pull off, but we're glad Capcom did. Number 3, combat. One thing we don't expect to change in the remake is the hard-hitting combat of the Resident Evil franchise. Resident Evil 4 was renowned for its high-octane, pulsating combat, and from what we've seen from the trailers, the remake is definitely looking to take that up a notch. The blast of Leon's shotgun still feels as satisfying as it did in the original game. Leon can still stagger zombies with well-timed headshot, deliver a devastating roundhouse kick, and then finish off the zombie with a knife stab, just like in the first game. Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The environment and settings will also play a big part in combat, as can be gleaned from the trailers. Dr. Salvador, the chainsaw-toting mini-boss of the village area, can pretty much cut barns in half and slice through obstacles during his rampage, and players will also have the ability to deflect his chainsaw attack with Leon's combat knife to avoid a pretty gory one-hit kill. This hints at the introduction of a new parrying mechanic to the combat features of RE4, and we love to see it. Another huge addition to the combat system of the game is the introduction of stealth mechanics. As opposed to running into every level guns blazing, Leon will now have the ability to stealthily avoid certain enemies and encounters. By virtue of this introduction, crouching seems to have also been added to Leon's repertoire, a gameplay mechanic that is quite rare in the Resident Evil franchise. Alright, how about the characters and NPCs? All the beloved NPCs from the original are back, and they're bigger and better. Fan favorite Louis Serra is back with a face only a mother could love. The Merchant is also back, along with his unmistakable Australian accent. Bad guys like Ramon Salazar, Osmond Sadler, and the gigantic Victorias Mendez both look insanely well remodeled, and they look ready to stalk our nightmares once again. Let's not forget the monsters we all know and love too, Del Lago and El Gigante, looking bigger and badder than ever. Now, speaking of bad guys, the enemy NPCs in RE4 Remake are more aggressive and unnerving than before. Not only are they able to take a lot more bullets without being staggered, they can also hold Leon while the Chainsaw Man or other enemies attack him, which is a pretty innovative change in my books. Okay, and lastly, let's talk about gameplay and narrative changes. Even though we know the remake is going to be staying very faithful to the original game in terms of the story and gameplay design, Capcom will undoubtedly be adding certain changes to the overall narrative to make the game feel fresh and to subvert some fan expectations. One particularly controversial example of this fact is the death of the dog that you are supposed to rescue at the start of the game. In the first game, Leon finds a dog caught in a bear trap, which the player can choose to rescue. Afterward, the rescued dog will come to Leon's aid in his first fight against El Chicanto. However, the trailers seem to hint at the fact that you won't be able to save the dog in the remake, as his dead carcass is found next to the bear trap you are supposed to free him from. This, of course, lends credence to the darker tone that the game is going for, which we discussed at the beginning of the video. Whether we can still save the dog during our playthrough, or whether he's permanently gone to that big, beautiful dog park in the sky, and what that means for the El Gigante fight, we'll just have to wait and see. The gameplay will also see the additions of crafting mechanics, similar to the one introduced in Resident Evil Village. Players will be able to craft certain items like bullets and healing potions on the fly, using some of the items they pick up during their playthrough. Finally, we may see some changes to Ashley's story, in line with the update to her character. In the trailer, Ashley can be seen pointing a gun at Leon while clearly under the influence of a La Plaga infection. Geez, Ashley, that gun could have sure come in handy during the first game. Whether this will be a big deal during the game or if it's simply a flash in the pan, we'll just have to wait and find out. So there you have it. Those are the 5 main changes we expect to see in Resident Evil 4 Remake. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and of course remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Ring that notification bell to get regular updates to the videos. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next one, guys.